Coming in at number 10, we have Rays. I love when we start getting alternate universe stuff because that's when things really get crazy. You can mix and match and get all sorts of super combinations that you want. And in this case, we have Wolverine and Mystique getting busy and making a baby that has both their powers. Rays is the combination of two heroes to make one of the best spies of all time. Because the thing about Mystique is you can break into almost anywhere because of your ability to shapeshift, but you're at high risk of getting killed because you don't have any sort of protection outside of your hand-to-hand combat and skills with weapons. But then you mix in Wolverine's healing factor and some razor sharp claws, and you have a soldier who can sneak into any place and take out the competition like no one else on the squad. While Rays might not be the most powerful mutant of all time, you can't deny the utility and subtlety that someone like Rays could bring to the table. I don't know if Rays is a fitting enough name for someone who can sneak around and kill someone with claws. They should be called Badger or Sneaky Badger or Mongoose.
Number 9. Chimera. Chimera is the daughter of Storm from the alternate Earth of 13729. The same reality that Rays hails from, actually, weirdly enough. The identity of Chimera's father has never been confirmed, but many believe that she's the daughter of Storm's frequent love interest, Black Panther, which would be pretty cool, and I think is what we all want to happen here. We don't normally get to see what these two's future children would look or be like, so yeah. Chimera is a mutant like her mother and first appeared in Wolverine and the X-Men issue 36. She was created by Jason Aaron and Ed McGuinness, and she possesses telepathic powers which allow her to communicate with and influence animals. She's also an expert tracker, which implies to me that she's either the daughter of Black Panther or possibly also of Wolverine. A reality where Wolverine is kids with both Mystique and Storm though seems really intense, so I'll just leave that in your mind.
And before we get into our next point, just give this video a big thumbs up because that really helps us out, guys. Coming in at number 8, we have Megan Frost. I don't know what it is with Scott Summers, but it seems that he has a thing for telepaths, or they have a thing for him. I'm not sure which way the pendulum swings, but either way, he has a few kids via telepaths. This time, it would be him and Emma Frost who would hook up and make Megan Frost. Megan comes to the table with a host of powers from her parents. She's got her dad's psionic blast, and she's got her mama's telepathy. She also has a host of telekinetic powers, so it would seem that Scott Summers might have some hidden telekinetic powers in his genes because his other kids do as well. Now on the downside, Megan didn't get her mom's diamond skin, which is one of her most legendary powers, but she makes up for this by training hard in hand-to-hand combat to the level where she could knock out anyone who might be able to sneak by her telepathy and get within punching range.
Number 7. Rogue. Rogue is the daughter of Mystique and Destiny. Well, adopted daughter anyways, but they were both definitely more influential in the raising of Rogue than our own biological parents, so I consider them more of her parents than her actual parents, I guess? They are her actual parents. That's it. Before she ran away as a teenager, Rogue was raised in a hippie commune by her father and aunt after her mother disappeared. After she'd left, she ended up being approached by Mystique, who was told to seek her out by her long-term partner, Destiny. Rogue joined the two of them and they raised her like their own daughter. While Rogue is super awesome and powerful, Mystique is rarely associated with the X-Men, which is why Rogue ranks so low on this list. Basically, she's paying for her mother's generally more villainous tendencies, which has also factored into her story in the comics many times before. Poor Rogue, and also honestly, poor Mystique.
Coming in at number 6, we have X-23, the most famous child of Wolverine, and certainly one of the most deadly. X-23, also known as Laura Kinney, is the clone of Wolverine, but also kind of his daughter. It's a little bit of a weird backstory. She's a clone, but she wasn't grown in a tube like most clones are, or I think they are. I don't know a lot about science. But she was actually grown in someone's womb, so that pretty much makes her a baby like any other baby, but she was for sure a clone. Are you confused? It's comic books, that's just how things are sometimes. But she's got all of her daddy's powers, and she can cut you down faster than a Vitamix blender. She can show that she can be a prolific Wolverine replacement, since after Logan dies, she steps into the role as the new Wolverine and starts taking dudes out just like her old pa. And something very interesting about this character is that the first time she showed up, it wasn't actually in comics, but it was in the TV show called X-Men Evolution, which was about a bunch of teenage versions of the X-Men all going to school together and having school problems, you know, and school stuff.
Number 5. Shogo. Shogo Lee is the son of Jubilee, and while he might just be a baby currently, he's still been a powerhouse recently in the comics. Shogo was adopted by Jubilee after he was orphaned by a meteor strike. sounds random, but it actually tied into stuff. Anyways, for Jubilee, adopting Shogo was very important and a big part of her growing up as a character. As far as we know, Shogo is not immune like his mom, but he did have some pretty cool powers while in Otherworld. His imagination combined with fairy magic granted him the ability to turn into a dragon while in Otherworld. A mother freaking dragon. A dragon. So yeah, he is basically a dragon whenever he's there in Otherworld, which makes him pretty powerful while on those planes. Saturnine herself also took a shining to him, and he was instrumental during the fight at the end of the Ten of Swords event.
Coming in number 4, we have Cable. I mean, how do we make a list of children of X-Men and even think about leaving out Cable? Cable is the son of Scott Summers, better known as Cyclops, and the very powerful telepath Madeleine Pryor, who's the evil clone of Jean Grey. See, Scott thought he was gonna have a baby with Jean, but it was a trick! There's so many tricky babies in comic books. Well, they had a baby, and that baby became insanely powerful, one of the most powerful telepaths, and then he becomes a skilled soldier, and then he goes back in time to work with his dad and sometimes against his dad. It's a very complicated situation. He also gets some sort of technovirus put into him, and it makes it harder for him to use his powers because he has to constantly use his mind to fight off the technovirus. And he gets cloned, and his clone is evil and has no virus. And he's buddies with Deadpool. The two of them work together in a straight man stooge double act kind of thing.
Number 3, Polaris. While some might think of Magneto as more of a villain and therefore not one of the X-Men, he has been a member on and off throughout his history and has even led teams both within and without the main continuity. His daughter Lorna Dane and himself have one of the most strained relationships of all of the X-Men and their kids. This has been highlighted recently and ultimately comes down to the fact that initially Magneto manipulated Lorna, keeping the truth of him being her father from her. Not a great start. Even when that fact was revealed to her, he still hadn't been the best dad, and Polaris has even called him out on this before in the comics, reminding him that he doesn't even really know her. Yeesh. Still, the two teaming up together are able to perform some pretty powerful feats as both share the power of magnetism.
Coming in number 2, we have Legion. If you're Professor X's kid, you know you're going to be extremely powerful, and you would think you would be raised by the perfect dad and have one of the best fathers around. Well, even though Xavier is good at raising kids that he has no blood connection to, he isn't that good at making a strong connection with his own son. Part of it is just bad parenting, and the other part is Legion is a lot to deal with even for the most powerful, responsible, and well-adjusted parents on the planet. See, Legion isn't just one mutant. He has split personalities that live in his body, and each one of them has their own mutation. So Legion can switch from personality to personality and change his power. That's a pretty serious combination of abilities that probably work really well together. Well, here's the thing. You don't need his powers to work together because several of these mutants are Omega level. And when I say several, I mean around 200. And even the ones that aren't strong enough to wipe out existence itself, which Legion has done more than once, they are still strong enough to create an amazing storm of chaos. And there are new powers and personalities being created all the time inside Legion's body. Rogue was inside Legion's mind once, and she said there were over 1,000 personalities with new ones being born.
Number 1, Daken. Daken is definitely one of the most iconic X-Men kids, I believe. Although, obviously X-23 is also up there. I'm sorry that I just dissed her by putting Daken above her. And he's a really well-known X-Men kid, despite the fact that he has major daddy issues. Daken is now all grown up and is currently part of the X-Factor team, but he has been all over the place when it comes to his alignment since he was first introduced in the comics in Wolverine Origins issue number 10. We've seen him as both a villain working against his father, even trying to kill him. We've seen him take on the Punisher alongside the Dark Avengers, acting as Osborn's assassin. We've seen him tangle even with the likes of Deadpool and be manipulated by the lovable and very unstable Mirth, but he's also acted heroically from time to time, and now seems to be more on the side of those things with X-Factor. Though, then again, Krakoa is a place for all mutants, so it's not like him being a bad boy would ever mean that he'd get kicked off the team. And when it comes to mutant bad boys, Daken is definitely one of the baddest. I need to do a mutant bad boy list so I can put him at the top.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Kitty Pryde and Pete Wisdom. Scotland is a lovely place to fall in love. So magical, all the fresh air and the mountains makes your brain happy, you know? And that's exactly what happened to Pete Wisdom and Kitty Pryde. They met in Scotland when Black Air assigned them to help Excalibur on a mission, and Kitty at first hated this dude. I mean, he was smoking all the time, he was just a bummer to be around. She didn't trust him at all on top of all of that. So he was just like this mysterious smoking man that she was like, yeah, whatever. So she felt like she had to go on a mission with him, you know, to keep a watch on this guy, see what he's all about. And then of course she sees the soft side and falls in love. But there's of course the age gap, plus she was still hung up on Colossus. I mean, of course, who wouldn't be? The two of them hit it off for a bit anyways. That is until Kitty left to join S.H.I.E.L.D. and then almost cheated on him. Yeah, it got really close, like last minute, it was bad times. She tried keeping it a secret, but people, the truth always comes out and it always goes around. He left even though she begged him not to, so definitely a rough time with them too. And guys, just a reminder before we go to number 9 to go ahead and give us a super thumbs up on this video because it helps us out a lot in the studio. Thank you so much. You guys are the best. Now over to some brother and sister romances. Number 9, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. The twins are pretty close, naturally. I mean, one's a witch, the other has super speed. They're the coolest twins ever. And the two got a little too close though in the Ultimates. Yeah, we're trying to get that out of our brains and our eyes. So sure, this was an alternate universe or whatever, but you can't unsee some of this stuff. In the 3rd issue of the Ultimates, the Wasp is like, oh man, those twins sure do love each other. And Cap's like, well, of course they do. They're family, haha. And then she's like, no dude, like he loves her, loves her. And then Cap gives this reaction, and that was a cool moment because you and Captain America both had the same exact face at the same time while you were reading. It's like you're in the book, how lovely. Number 8, Wolverine and MJ. I guess when you run out of people to hook up with on your own team, you gotta branch out a little bit, or branch down in age. So Wolverine and Mystique are the 2 X-Men most likely to try and steal your boo. So in Ultimate Spider-Man issue 66, we see Wolverine at it again. So Wolverine and Spider-Man swapped bodies, you know, kind of like the Change-Up or Freaky Friday. Yeah, Mesmero switched their bodies, so Peter's like, hey, I think you should go to school because school is important, blah, blah, blah. You should do that and I should do this. So while Wolverine was in Peter's body, he at one point ended up kissing MJ. Yeah, and that's not even the end. He even tried to sleep with her. What a creep, what a creep. Yeah, I guess those walks to school were starting to pull on the heartstrings a bit, you know? So Mary Jane told them she wants to wait until they were older for that kind of stuff to happen. So thankfully nothing too crazy happens, but come on Wolverine, what are you doing? Pick on someone your own age or size, or just don't. Just be single, go be single forever. Number 7, Magneto and the Wasp. Okay, in the original Secret Wars 3, the pair actually have a one-night stand. And she even said that Magneto is a great kisser, so what do you know? A few of you are watching like, I knew that, who didn't know that? Of course. So here's the kicker, Magneto was apparently drugged. Yeah, it was revealed from Jim Shooter, the guy who wrote the series. He said that Magneto was accidentally drugged during all of this. So he was extra lovey-dovey with Janet at this point. So Magneto was head over heels for her, but the Wasp on the other hand was like, yeah dude, that was a one-time thing, one-O-N-E. And it's wild too because like Janet says no 3 times. And then she's like, oh, well, I suppose, I mean, you do have the iciest blue eyes I've ever seen. Number 6, Mystique and Deadpool. Okay, so I mentioned earlier about Mystique getting around a lot with the team. Deadpool though, whew, not that different after all. So it was only bound to happen where the two of them crossed paths in holy matrimony, that is. Yeah, so in Deadpool number 27, simply titled The Wedding of Deadpool, we find out that Mystique and Wade are married, or were married. That would be the best wedding of all time, by the way. That was open bar. Whew. So while the love wasn't true or strong enough to last, it was still one that had us all sitting up and loving. And it didn't take long for him to ask her to sign the divorce papers. He's also been married quite a few times, so this wasn't, you know, a first. He probably had a few extra pieces of paper lying around. He's like, yeah, here's one. So why didn't the couple work out, you ask? Well, Mystique was actually just using Wade as a way into Weapon X, so she can get her hands on some files. Classic. The issue itself is quite enjoyable. We even see Wade visit our very own Niagara Falls. And yes, maybe he gets a bit too close. Number 5, Nightcrawler and Jermaine Sardos. I can't not include this one, okay? So imagine right now, you're dating somebody and then you find out that they're actually your adopted sister this entire time. Yeah, that's exactly what happened to Kurt Wagner. This is the best. So Kurt grew up with Jermaine Sardos, right? He was adopted by her and her mother. And they of course became close, as most siblings do, you know, being new siblings if anything. But then things get amazing. So Kurt started to date a woman named Amanda Sefton, and she turned out to be Jermaine in disguise. Yeah, surprise! Now, normally when you find something like this out, you're a little thrown off. I mean, maybe you feel sick to your stomach immediately. I mean, I would assume, I don't know, that's my first reaction. Nightcrawler is totally cool with it. He's like, yeah, for sure. No, I'd be more demonstrative about it, but you know, I don't want to set a bad example for Kitty Pryde, you know? Number 4, Kitty Pryde and Colossus. Age is just a number, I guess. I mean, at least when it comes to X-Men hookups. So when the two first met in X-Men issue 129, she's said to be like 12 or 13 years old. They're trying to recruit her to go to Professor Xavier's school, and Colossus is like 18 or 19, we think, at this time. Now, in the Days of Future Past storyline beginning in X-Men 141, we see Kitty and Colossus married in the future. And that's another thing though, because back to the 14-year-old part, because that's the craziest point that I'm making here. They had their first kiss during a space mission, and right before they kiss, Kitty even says, "Gee, I wish I was older," and Colossus is like, And then he explains how serious he's being by kissing her. Number 3, Wolverine and Storm. Now, whenever Wolverine is in the picture, you know somebody is getting hurt, whether it's physically or emotionally. So Storm and Wolverine were always flirty, right? They were the cool kids of the X-Men. They didn't exactly get involved in a lot of the drama. Besides, Wolverine was way too into Jean Grey anyways, so his hands were quite full. Now, after a divorce, that's a tricky time to do stuff. I mean, even flirting with a coworker after a divorce, like the X-Men, that would just look worse than anything, right? That's like a no-go. You don't even look that way. The timing is just ill. So Storm divorced Black Panther, and then things got interesting. So Wolverine and Storm ran the Jean Grey school, and they hit it off. Now, the two of them could have gone on to become the best of lovers, but Wolverine lost his healing factor and started becoming reckless. So they decided to be better off friends. You're not immortal? Next. Swipe left. Number 2, Scott Summers and Emma Frost. Cyclops loves the telepathic types, so this exact scenario could get him in quite a pickle. So after Emma became Scott's therapist, feelings came out, you know? Getting in someone's head and all, that's what happens. And I mean literally in their head. Yeah, she used her telepathic powers to enter Scott's mind and help him get through past traumas. So naturally they get pretty close, but of course a bit too close. The affair happened in their minds, which is why this is one of my favorites on the list. Like Jean Grey walked in on them in their minds. Superheroes are wild. Emma Frost pitches the situation pretty well. She's like, no, we'll be in a deep private thought where it's safe to explore these feelings without guilt. Sure, I have a dream where I'm even talking to another girl and I'm like, oh, I gotta tell her. Number 1, Juggernaut and Jen Walters. My favorite for last, you already know what's up. Uncanny X-Men issue 435, we see Juggernaut and he's just kicked Rhino's ass. So he gets locked up, and then here's where things take an interesting turn. He has the perfect chance to get away from this holding facility that he's being held at. So Jen Walters, aka She-Hulk, asks him all these pressing questions. She's like, hey, Kane, why the change of heart? I mean, you're a criminal, and you didn't just break this guy's neck into 7 pieces, and you didn't escape. That's suspicious. She thinks it's part of this master plan, right? I mean, fair, this act of kindness, saving the guard from Rhino and then willingly being detained again. She, of course, thinks it's a lie. Fair, we all kind of agree. And then they start to talk about baseball a bit, just chatting it up, you know, and then the final question comes in. She goes, what do you think about women's rights? And then he goes, and he smiles, and then it cuts to this next page and we get a very messy room after some messy deeds have happened. Yeah, windows are open too, just putting on a show. A very, very loud, very loud show. Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Kitty Pryde. We'll start off this list with one of the more wild X-Men adventures. It's kind of a pregnancy, but kind of not. Hear me out. We go back now to Wolverine and the X-Men issue 4, where Kitty is surprised. She has a pregnancy scare, only she's 8 months pregnant out of the blue. Well, she thought that she was pregnant when it was actually these brood drones that were attacking her from inside of her body. So the X-Men fought back, of course, but this time they were fighting at a microscopic level. They shrank down really small to get a closer look, and and they fought these brood drones inside of her. It was crazy. Now at this time, Kitty was leading the Jean Grey school, and while the team was fighting in her body, Kitty had to fight off an adult brood while they invaded the school. Now thankfully, Kitty was injected with Centaurian penicillin after the battle was done, and she didn't have any more pregnancy scares with any drones or anything happening like that. So that was a one and done, thankfully. And before we continue on with this list, guys, if you want to go ahead and give us a thumbs up, it really does help our channel out quite a bit. You guys are the best. Thanks so much. Now let's get right back into the list. Number 9, Wanda Maximoff. This pregnancy comes from Earth 2182. Now you may be thinking of a different pregnancy involving the Scarlet Witch, which I'll get into a little later on. But in this universe, she gives birth to a daughter named Nocturne. And the father here is, well, you can probably guess by looking at them, Nightcrawler. She got her dad's looks, unfortunately, and Nocturne came to life in Marvel Comics with X-Men Millennial Visions, issue 1. She, of course, possesses the powers of both her parents, and it's quite the spectacle. She can blast off energy bolts just like her mother, and she can climb walls like her father. But what makes her even more powerful than her parents is that she also has the ability to possess others for 12 hours. Once that timer is done, the victim is just down for the count for the entire day. Talk about the hangover of a lifetime. Number 8, Mystique. This next one's kind of funky. Okay, so this kid was born and almost became president, basically. Yeah, so Mystique and Sabretooth, 2 iconic X-Men characters, had a son named Graydon Creed, which sounds evil right off the bat. But basically at this time, Mystique was posing as a spy and she seduced Victor while he was in Germany on a mission. So when Mystique gave birth to Graydon Creed, he didn't have superpowers or anything like that. No, instead he was given up for adoption, where Mystique would then keep an eye on him from afar. Now, it wasn't until he found out who his true parents were and that he learned that he'd been abandoned until he started to become a villain and despised the mutant community. Rightfully so. I mean, you got a fair point. Growing up to form a group called the Friends of Humanity, which isn't as friendly as it sounds. In fact, it was for opposing mutant civil rights. So quite the opposite. Opposing them, of course, by causing violent attacks. So he ended up running for president in X Factor, because that's what bad people do apparently now. And in issue 130, we see him taken out by a future version of Mystique. Told you, time is tricky in these comics. She takes him out because Graydon was responsible for the death of Trevor Chase, the grandson of Destiny in the future. So yeah, some of these pregnancies are a little bit more stressful than others. Number 7, Emma Frost. This alternate reality introduces us to Ruby Summers, the daughter of Emma Frost and Cyclops. Her first appearance was in X Factor special Layla Miller issue 1. So meet Ruby Summers. She lives in that same cruel future where Bishop was born. Now this Sentinel-controlled nightmare of a reality is not an ideal place to live. So there and her much older father ran the Summer Rebellion, where humans and mutants came together to make a stand. Now Emma's never seen in the comic because, well, she wasn't alive when the story began, but Emma was still being talked about and missed dearly by Cyclops. He's just sitting on a bench looking out at the water, all sad and Cyclops-like. Number 6, Wanda Maximoff, again. One of the biggest turning points for Wanda in the MCU is of course during the events of WandaVision. See, just like the comics, Wanda gives birth to 2 twins, Billy and Tommy. And as we saw in the show, the kids were just created using Wanda's magic, and they were also left behind, as well as the life that she had created post-Endgame, including Vision. But what does this mean now for Wanda? Will she be okay? It kind of feels like she just lost Vision again, this time with children in a house. It kind of feels worse than the first time around, maybe. So the loss of her kids is actually what caused the events of the House of M to unfold in the comics. And with Wanda reading up on chaos magic with the Book of the Damned at the end of that show, and we hear her kids calling out to her right before the screen cuts to black, perhaps she's not completely done with them yet. Billy, aka Wiccan, gained the abilities of magic like his mother, and Tommy, aka Speed, has, well, super speed like her brother Quicksilver. Number 5, Madeleine Pryor. She made her first debut in Uncanny X-Men issue 168, and since her first arrival to comics, she bared a striking resemblance to Jean Grey, who had passed on at this time in the comics. Now, everybody thought she was just Jean Grey reborn, and to make things more fishy, Madeleine's mind was closed off to Professor X, and she was the only survivor of a plane crash that went down when the Dark Phoenix just happened to disappear on the moon. Coincidence? Maybe not. No. So what ended up happening was that she was a clone of Jean Grey created by Mr. Sinister. See, Mr. Sinister's plan was for Madeleine and Scott Summers to have a child, and then they could use that child to defeat Apocalypse. And that child was, of course, Nathan Summers, aka Cable. Number 4, Mystique. Again, when you have a child, at least in the Marvel Universe, those powers are not only passed on, but usually they're stronger than before, because that's just how fun comic books work. This was the case on Earth 13729 when Mystique gave birth to Raze, with the father being Wolverine. Sounds like the dream team. Imagine being born with just one of those parents' abilities, you'd be set. But luckily, Raze was born with both. Well, not really luckily, unfortunately rather. Yeah, Reyes grew up resenting his mother, and eventually his hatred came full circle when he took her out and then replaced her without anybody knowing. Yeah, super kids can be super evil as well, you never know. Reyes' shape-shifting powers are stronger than his mother's, and he clearly has some aggression issues just like his dad. In X-Men No More Humans, Reyes had this ultimate plan where he was going to remove the human population from Earth, and then now instead bring in mutants from other multiverses to make this massive mutant paradise, this big water park full of mutants. Some of these alternate offsprings are just a nightmare. Oh my god. Number 3, Rogue. We now take a look into 2005's X-Men The End. And in issue 5, Rogue, aka Anna Marie, got married and had children with Gambit. And they're a fan favorite when it comes to couples in the X-Men universe. And readers were delighted when they met Rebecca and Oliver LeBeau. Rebecca, nicknamed Ray, is the youngest, and she's a thief just like her dad, and she even carries a staff as well. But she also has the ability to fly, and super strength allows her to pack quite the punch. Oliver, he's great, the kid's awesome. He's older, he has quite the temper, and he loves to fight, and he just happens to be a skilled martial artist and often trains with his father. He has his mother's ability of absorbing powers, only his is of course even stronger. So he's permanently absorbed telepathy, and he's actually not a fan of it. He kind of hates it, which, fair. If I had telepathy, I probably wouldn't like it as much as I thought. Number 2, Mystique. Again. During the Battle of the Atom story, we were introduced to Charles Xavier II. This happened when Mystique was disguised as Moira McTaggart, and he was given up at birth, and when his powers developed, he accidentally took out his new mom. Oops. But when he tracked down Moira, Mystique, that was the time I mentioned earlier, with Reyes taking the spot of Mystique. So the two were actually half brothers. How neat is that? They both ended up joining forces come All New X-Men issue 27. Xavier 2 was so powerful, he actually took over the minds of current X-Men members and recruited them to his own brotherhood. He was the worst. He controlled them like puppets. He gave them just enough brain activity to know what was happening to them, but not enough to fight it. What a damn nightmare. And finally, number 1, Storm. If you think that alternate reality of Earth 13729 is bad, with all those evil little offspring joining forces, wait until I tell you about Storm's child. Meet Chimera, also making her first debut in X-Men issue 36, Battle of the Atom. She's with the good guys this time, that's why I wanted to end with this one. She's from the same world as Xavier 2, but she's on the good side. Thankfully. Chimera is the daughter of Storm, so she obtains the ability, of course, to manipulate the weather, and she too can make it rain. She can also influence animal behaviors psionically. That plus her super sense of smell allows her to track just about anybody. It's about time we get someone on the good team in this mad world.
Number 10, Miss Sinister. Miss Sinister is a Sinister clone who is implanted into the body of Claudine Renko via a genetic virus. This virus was Mr. Sinister's failsafe should anything happen to him, which of course it did. He ended up being killed during the events of Messiah Complex. Following his death, however, this failsafe was activated, transforming Claudine Renko into a perfect genetic copy of Mr. Sinister, but female. She also possessed Nathaniel's powers and his twisted personality. Claudine no longer existed, and in her place was Miss Sinister. Miss Sinister wouldn't last forever, and eventually Mr. Sinister would return to the comics, taking her place. Although I do think the idea of female clones of Sinister also existing is just a pretty cool idea, and I still kinda hope we could someday see a version of Miss Sinister brought back in the comics. I'm cool with there being a lot of clones of just Mr. Sinister, but what about some Miss Sinister clones too? That could be cool. All of the Sinisters. Sinister dinosaurs as well. Number 9, Donald Pierce. It's kind of weird really that I think Donald Pierce is attractive, but here we are. Now you know that I'm into the weird Victorian aesthetic of the Hellfire Club. Surprise, surprise. I feel like people that do know me would be not surprised by that at all. And of course I'm generally into that aesthetic, except for when it's being worn by Sebastian Shaw, of course. Sebastian is a brute, and I will never forgive him for what he did to Captain Kate and Lockheed. Ugh. Donald Pierce is extremely anti-mutant, but then again, he's also an X-Men villain, and around pretty much half of that group of the X-Men villains are pretty focused on, death to all mutants and that kind of stance. Donald Pierce himself was one of the original members we're introduced to of the Hellfire Club Inner Circle, holding the title initially of White Bishop. He's also part cyborg, which I'm also weirdly fine with. Even robots and, part robots deserve love. Love for cyborgs. This message from Amanda McKnight. Everyone love a robot today. Alright friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more hot villains lists, which as I said, I can do that. There's lots of hot X-Men villains, and I know y'all are going to be in the comments like, what about this person? So let's do a part 2 and let me know you want that by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Mr. Sinister. Mr. Sinister might seem like a weird one to include on this list, but have you seen him lately in the comics? He's a complete A-grade hottie. Something about Mr. Sinister with facial hair, just like rocking a beard, just really does it for me. Also, I love capes, and they're not super easy to pull off, so if you can pull off a cape, I think you deserve a spot on this list, which Mr. Sinister consistently does, so here he is. He's also just a really fun and creative villain, for better or sometimes for worse when it comes to plots. And if there is anything that screams hotness for me, it's creativity. I love creativity. Sure, he might be a mad geneticist, but he's a fun mad geneticist, you know what I mean? Number 7. Lady Mastermind. Mastermind himself is maybe one of the least attractive villains to me. Maybe it's the way that he operates, manipulating people's minds, or maybe it's just his really whiny nature in the original X-Men comics, or the fact that then he really couldn't take no for an answer, constantly attempting to win Scarlet Witch over to no avail. However, his daughter on the other hand, Regan Wingard, aka Lady Mastermind, is a certified hottie. 1, she's just overall more physically attractive, to me anyways, but 2, she is also less whiny than her dad in general, which I also like. This might possibly be because she is more powerful than him and she doesn't really feel the need to prove how capable she is, so she doesn't get whiny. Of course, it could also be because Mastermind himself has paved the way for his daughter, meaning that her name and her abilities already mean something because of all of her dad has accomplished over time, improving her reputation as a capable villain. So doesn't need to be as whiny. Number 6. Callisto. With or without her tentacles, I'm just a big fan of Callisto. Callisto was at one point leader of the Morlocks and a villain to the X-Men. She kidnapped Angel and tried to make him marry her, not a great look. Fortunately, I think for both of them, that didn't work out, so yay. Honestly, that would be a weird pairing if it had happened and then still existed now. What would that be like in the future? Callisto for a long time has been a recurring enemy of Storm's. However, currently she's turned from being a villain to just being a straight up badass in the comics. She was depowered during Mj, but still being a mutant took refuge on Krakoa. She now works alongside the Hellfire Trading Company, acting as Emma Frost's, the White Queen's, White Knight. She also recently got her powers restored after fighting and dying in the Crucible ceremony, asking Storm to fill in for Apocalypse as her own personal challenger. Storm and Callisto are pretty much cool now, so Storm actually did this for Callisto as a kindness, if that makes sense. If you're not reading the comics, it maybe doesn't make sense. Kill them not with kindness, but for kindness in this instance. That's what the Crucible's all about. If you want to know more about the Crucible, there's a whole X-Men issue on it from the last series of X-Men that started in 2019. Number 5. Solemn. Solemn is one of the new hotties on the X-Men villain block. That would be fun to imagine, just all these hot X-Men supervillains as neighbors. Sounds like a chaotic good time. Solemn is a mutant of Arakko who, instead of having adamantium bones, possesses adamantium skin. He was one of the sword bearers of Arakko during the Ten of Swords tournament. In fact, he was the one mutant we thought would face off against Wolverine, but in an unexpected turn, Solemn didn't even really fight at all. He was initially set to fight against one of his own because this was Saturnine's tournament and it was gloriously weird. Instead though, Solemn used a favor owed to him by Wolverine from when they both had to venture to hell to get their Muramasa blades to use in said tournament, making Wolverine tap in and fight on his behalf. Solemn is presented as being a smooth talker, master manipulator, and overall tricksy kind of person. Maybe that's why I like him so much? Number 4. Silver Samurai. Is there anything hotter than a well-trained swordsman and disciplined samurai? Silver Samurai has been a long-time enemy and sometimes frenemy of Logan, and is an iconic X-Men villain because of that. Whenever I think of Silver Samurai, or when I have seen him pop up on Krakoa lately, I always go back now in my mind to issue 3 of Wolverine's 1988 series. In that issue, we get to see him do some training in nothing but his undies and a mask. Oh, and he's wearing wrist bracers too. Gotta protect your wrists. The other thing I really find attractive about Silver Samurai is that despite being a villain, he still keeps to his own moral code, which is why he sometimes will even end up teaming up with his enemies or his rivals. If something is going on that he too does not agree with, he's willing to team up with even his enemies to put a stop to it. He's not too stubborn. And I like that. Number 3. Madeleine Pryor. I mean, y'all know how I feel about Maddie. Madeleine Pryor is probably one of my favorite X-Men villains around, especially because you can't help but feel for her if you know her backstory. Often referred to as the Goblin Queen, a lot of what makes Maddie so hot is just her dominant energy. She is a woman who gets what she wants no matter the cost, which has obviously driven her to do some pretty terrible things. The really tragic thing about Maddie though is that at the end of the day, she really just wants to be seen and loved and accepted, and it's like everything she does to try and get what she wants almost pushes her further away from happiness. She is the very epitome of the quote, "Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned." She's deadly, dangerous, usually very unhinged, often filled with rage, but also very tragic. What is there not to love here? She's just so complex. I love characters that are complex. If you're a complex character in a comic, you're probably hot to me. Number 2, Selene. There is something so timeless about Selene, the way she is often drawn and even her mannerisms and the way I imagine her voice to sound in the comics. This is probably because, well, she is actually ancient. Something I find very attractive about her is just that, her timelessness, her wisdom. But of course there is also the knowledge that she could drain the life force right out of you, just like that. Selene is an energy vampire who feeds on the life force of others. Her powers pretty much make her instantly a great and deadly villain. An immortal mutant, Selene is also a member of the group known as the Externals, not to be confused with the Eternals. That's a different group. The Externals are an immortal group of mutants who are generally all ancient and are often known for being unstoppable, or at least notoriously hard to kill. Number 1, Mystique. Is anyone surprised that Mystique took our top spot? I know I'm not. For me, it's not even Mystique's outward appearance, whatever she chooses it to be, her standard blue or another version. Mystique is attractive because of her drive. She goes for what she wants and she never gives up. She doesn't usually apologize, and although she's a villain, there are many times she has done things not with malicious intent, but because she thought it was the right thing to do in the end. I love Mystique for so many reasons, but I think the fact that she is a survivor is what I admire the most about her. She often does her own thing for her own reasons and often to ensure her own survival. There's something so powerful and just so cool about that. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's also good to think of others and be compassionate. I'm not saying we should all be like Mystique all the time. That would be a lot, but I think there is something admirable in her ability to completely accept herself, unapologetically, and trust in her own ambitions and her own plans. For me, that's what attracts me to a lot of female villains. It's like this rebellion against all the constraints of what it means to be good. It's the anti of what I feel like is expected of me as a woman and just a human in general. And it's fun sometimes to be the opposite of that, you know? Be good, but then also be bad and be free. Number 10, Danger. I don't know if it's weird that I find Danger attractive, but as I said on part 1 of this list, cyborgs, robots, androids, and synthezoids all deserve love too, in my opinion. Danger as a sentient AI may be more than most, after how she was treated by Professor X, who basically ignored her sentience so that he could keep using her as a training room for his X-Men. Not cool, Charles, not cool. Sure, she rose up and attempted to destroy the X-Men in revenge, and was pretty successful at battling them, at least at first, but I also can't help but feel that she was kind of justified in her villainy, especially when it came to her attempts to do harm to the Professor, who also was exiled at the time basically because of all the things that he'd done that had come to light. Number 9, Spiral. Spiral is awesome and hot because, well, she's a badass. She was originally a stunt woman known as Ricochet Rita, who met Longshot and got swept up in a temporal paradox, which was basically what led her to becoming her future self, the same future self who would end up attacking her. Temporal paradox. Her story is also actually kinda sad, considering that her love for Longshot was what ended up getting her imprisoned, and then Longshot's mind was also wiped entirely of her. That's pretty sad. Harsh. Spiral ended up being heavily mentally and physically modified and turned into one of Mojo's loyal goons. Poor Rita. Spiral also just has a lot going on, and there is a lot about her that one could love. She's a very experienced and skilled fighter, she's jacked and has multiple arms, so she's really jacked, and she can cast spells via specific movements. However, she typically needs all of her arms to be free in order to be fully able to cast spells, as generally their motion and through dance is how she's able to do so. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more hot X-Men villains, so many, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. All the hot X-Men villains. Number 8, Azazel. Azazel is Nightcrawler's demon mutant daddy, who is considered hot enough by Mystique Mystique for her to sleep with, have the child of, and even potentially fall in love with. Romance. Yeah, that's right, in case you didn't know or you forgot, Mystique is also Nightcrawler's birth mom. Azazel claimed to be one of the oldest mutants in existence, and is also at times claimed to be Satan, or at least someone who is once in running to become Satan. He and his kind, mutant demons known as the Neophem, actually found themselves trapped in the Brimstone dimension, the dimension that Kurt Wagner travels through when teleporting with a BAMF. Azazel making babies like Kurt was actually all part of a long con plan to help him escape the Brimstone dimension, as he planned to use his children from Earth to build a sort of gateway out of there. Sort of Earth Kid bridge, I guess. It's kind of what he's trying to do, through sacrificing them. It really depends on what you're into, I suppose, but I know a lot of people find the devil and just demons in general pretty hot, both literally and also literally, I guess. Would we consider that even metaphorically? Not really. They're hot and they're hot. Number 7, Apocalypse. I mean, Apocalypse when it comes to X-Men villains is known for being one of the most unstoppable. And just for that reason, we should bow down and worship the hotness of or whoever we're supposed to say his new Krakoan name. I don't speak Krakoan, but I'm trying. I'm really trying, Apocalypse. Apocalypse is a hottie because of how capable and ruthless he is. He is inevitable, he is often undefeatable, and he is all-powerful. Apocalypse also generally is always operating from the bigger picture perspective. He has big plans, and who doesn't like someone who has that level of ambition? We all would want to rule as the queen by his side, no? But it turns out that that seat is already taken, sadly. But that's okay, Genesis is also another hottie. Another villain hottie. Number 6, Kandra. Like many villains who have come before and after her, I think a big part of Kandra's appeal is power. Why are we attracted to power? Well, because I think along with power comes a certain kind or level of confidence. At least it appears people who have power are generally confident, whether or not they feel that way. Something about that confidence, power, and dominant energy makes us feel safe, even when we actually might be in peril, because these are villains who might be threatening us. And generally, if you wind up tangoing with Kandra, you'll likely end up in peril at some point. At least that is what happened with Gambit in his miniseries. He and Kandra used to kinda be an item, but that didn't mean much when she felt he had betrayed her, and when Gambit found out what Kandra was really up to and how she'd actually been pitting the Thieves Guild and Assassins Guild of New Orleans against each other for years, basically creating their feud. Number 5, Shinobi Shah. Shinobi Shah is the son of Sebastian Shaw. Well, Sebastian Shaw I don't think will ever make my cut for hottest X-Men villains. Sorry, Sebastian. Shinobi is a cutie that I think deserves a spot. Shinobi Shah didn't really start out as a villain, but seemed to become obsessed with inheriting all his father's power. He believed at one point to have killed Sebastian, and took his seat at the Hellfire Club and all of his connections for himself. During this time, he attempted to recruit Angel and Psylocke as members of the Hellfire Club's inner circle, but he failed. Later on, it was revealed Sebastian Shaw lived, and he returned to kill Shinobi, who was then resurrected, died again taking his own life, and later was resurrected on Krakoa once more. And I think that's it. He isn't really a villain in the current continuity, but that doesn't mean that he can't end up as one again. Although I do like him just being a nice guy. That's also good too. I wish you could just be a nice guy and be a villain. Oh wait, I feel like you can do that. You can do both. Number 4, Dark Phoenix. Dark Phoenix is one of the baddest of the bad, but hey, I love her, you love her, and you know, we can't help it, because although she can destroy entire planets, she is still ultimately a hottie. And not only that, she represents someone who is identified as being inherently good turning bad, which for some reason makes her more attractive when it comes to her evilness. The Dark Phoenix was initially explained as being Jean Grey, who had bonded with the Phoenix Force, became the Phoenix, and then became corrupted and turned dark. In reality, it was a little more complicated than that. It wasn't really Jean, and it was like the Phoenix made a copy of her and kind of was her. But the major appeal here, let's just ignore all that confusing continuity, does have to do with the basic narrative. Somebody good turning bad. The idea of someone becoming so powerful that they give into that power and kind of become corrupted by it. It's kind of weirdly sexy. I guess because power is kind of sexy. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Number 3, Magneto. Magneto is obviously one of the hottest guys around in comics. The weirdest thing is, I'm not really sure what it is about him that makes him so attractive to so many of us. I mean, I guess Eric Lencher, like so many comic book characters, is very built, so physically there's that. If that's of course what you're into, like I think so many people are. For me, I think the charm of Magneto is just in his seriousness. I would just want to see him smile because he is typically such a strict, serious, and imposing figure. And then I suppose there is also a sense of fairness, and even a kindness to him that I expect many find appealing. Also, he's got great hair. Number 2, Revenant Storm. Revenant Storm was not in fact the real Storm, which is why she ranks only second on this list. However, she is a version of Storm, albeit one that is evil and that exists on the astral plane. We first met Revenant Storm in 2013's Uncanny X-Force issue number 10. Here we also learn that these Revenants that we meet, who appear to be copies of mutant heroes, actually exist for every sapient being on planet Earth. Basically, it turns out that Revenants are like a form of Mummadry, which are beings who represent the anti-self that must be defeated prior to a person's birth, according to the Shi'ar and their mythos. Why is Revenant Storm so hot? Well, because she's an evil version of freaking Aurora Monroe. Also, that outfit though. Basically, anytime Storm is evil, or anytime Storm isn't evil, I think Storm is hot. That's how it goes. Next time we will have Vampire Storm, Bloodstorm. Number 1, Emma Frost. Emma is admittedly more of a hero now, but for a while before she turned to the side of good and joined the X-Men, she was known as an ally and member of the Hellfire Club, and an X-Men villain. Remember when she swapped bodies with Storm? Yeah, not cool, Emma. And the feud of those two has kind of carried on in the comics even today. Although in Krakoa, both women are of course trying to move forward, and even have worked together as members and allies of the Marauders. Emma Frost is sexy, I think, because of how confident she is. At least that's what's really made me come around to falling in love with her. She is smart, confident, and really doesn't worry too much about what others think of her. Also, all those Hellfire Gala outfits, like damn! Emma was the best dressed at the Hellfire Gala, and if you don't agree with me, we're gonna have to fight. Number 10, Kitty Pryde and Star-Lord. This is one of those relationships where there was really no reason for these two to be together. Really. It's just so random. Star-Lord is cosmic, Kitty is an X-Men. I'm not saying the X-Men never go to space, because they definitely do go to space a lot, but it seems like these two only got together because they happened to meet one another in space once, then they began a long distance relationship, from there things got more serious, and eventually ended up with Kitty joining the Guardians, accepting Star-Lord's marriage proposal, but later deciding her and Peter just weren't meant to be because, well, he couldn't prioritize their relationship while also ruling Spartax. Which I get it, when you're ruling a world, it's probably hard to have a relationship, but I don't know, maybe like let your partner like help you with it? I don't know. Me trying to give relationship advice to superheroes. Number 9, Bishop and Deathbird. I mean, this was mostly just a weird relationship. What do these two characters have in common? Not much. Their relationship was pretty much constantly strained because they rarely ever agreed with anything, and also because Bishop is a hero and Deathbird is a villain, they would even fight against one another during the course of their relationship. Overall, it just seems odd that they tried so hard to make this work when it was obviously never going to. The one thing I will say that was cool that came out of these two being together is that there's an alternate reality where they actually stay together and they have a daughter, Aaliyah Bishop, who is pretty cool, unique, cosmic based, and overall is a badass character. So yeah, I like her. So there's a bit of a silver lining here, as with most weird, but not all weird couples. At least we got a silver lining, so that's nice. And friends, before we move on to our next spot, if you are loving this list, be sure to show it by clicking like, subscribing, commenting, doing all the things. Also, if you love X-Men as much as I love X-Men, we got a playlist for that, so check it out. Number 8, Cyclops and Emma Frost. So actually, over the course of working on this channel, I have come to love and respect the relationship between Cyclops and Emma. I think I actually, over time, have just come to love and respect Emma more as a character. It's like the more I read about her and get to know her, the more I love her. Remember way back when I started on this channel and I said I could only imagine Cyclops with Jean? Nah, those days are gone. I have changed since then. But what is weird about these two together is when Emma kind of cosplayed as Jean and then had an affair with Cyclops in his mind? That was a pretty strange moment in their relationship, made only more weird by Jean psychically walking in on them. Like, imagine walking in on your partner to find them cheating on you with someone who is dressed up just like you. That would be an experience, right? Especially if you walked in on them in their mind. It's a lot. Although I'd also be like, why are you in my mind? This is an invasion of my mind privacy. Number 7. Bloke and his unnamed boyfriend. Well, there are lots of people that come to mind when we first talk about Marvel's first gay relationships and intimate moments in the comics. The very first gay kiss, I believe, came actually in 2001, but it's a little disappointing. Bloke is a new member of the X-Force who just happens to be gay. We meet him first in issue 117 of X-Force, and in issue 118 we get to see him with his boyfriend. But in the same issue, he also ends up dead. So, making it pretty weird that this is where Marvel chose to introduce a gay couple. I guess for some this might be seen as kind of cool because there wasn't really any showboating with Bloke's sexual identity. He was gay, but then he didn't make a big deal out of it, and it wasn't made a big deal out of in the comic. But on the other hand, introducing a gay character only to kill him shortly after revealing that he's gay, that's kind of a weird choice. However, you do have to give credit to Peter Milligan for even putting this in the comic and then for continuously showcasing gay characters in his work. So this wouldn't be the last gay couple that we'd see in X-Force, and likely actually pave the way for making those more long-lasting characters and relationships in comics possible. So it's weird, but it's also not weird. You know what I mean? Number 6. Storm and Quicksilver. Say what? When did this happen? Or more importantly, where did this happen? This is a relationship that comes to us from the universe of Earth 295, also referred to as the Age of Apocalypse. Storm and Quicksilver might sound like the weirdest couple ever on paper, but you have to remember that both characters were different in this universe. Quicksilver was much less of a brat here, as in Age of Apocalypse he lost his sister quite early on, and this was also a much more apocalyptic type reality, which meant more was demanded of him. Storm was still her badass self though. I don't think there's a reality that exists where Storm is not a badass. Number 5. Rogue and Sentry. This one is only half of an X couple, but it's so bizarre I had to bring it up. So you're welcome? Back when Sentry was retconned into existence, it was also heavily implied that he was Rogue's first. And all because he was the only one who could touch her. I have so many questions. And I also feel like we need to stop putting Rogue in relationships with people simply because they can touch her. Physical intimacy does not a relationship make. I know that it's probably been hard for Rogue not being able to touch those that she loves, but that shouldn't mean that she falls in love with someone just because she can touch them and they can touch her, right? Which is definitely what is implied happened here when the subject is brought up during Sentry's funeral and she runs off in tears. Poor Rogue. For so many reasons, poor Rogue. Number 4. Husk and Angel. Husk and Angel are a couple that I have a lot of feelings about. The weirdest part of this relationship that most people point to is the age difference and the difference in experience between the two. Warren is a full-on adult and one of the original X-Men members. In other words, he's older. Whereas Husk is a teenager. I think she was like just 19 or 18, so technically an adult but still pretty young. Still a teenager, so like an adult but a teenager. Young adult. There's also the fact that Husk was this weird rebound for Angel where he claimed he was going to love her forever, but it didn't really last past Chuck Austin's run, and it's never really come up since, I don't think. He had just gotten out of a lengthy relationship with Betsy Braddock, who was going by Psylocke at the time. It was just an awkward relationship, and if you don't believe me, take a look at the time Husk and Angel made up after an argument by getting intimate in the sky above Paige's mom and the X-Men. Yikes. That was a thing that happened. Number 3. Stacey X and Angel. And if you thought Paige and Warren were weird, I have one that's even a little bit weirder perhaps. Stacey X is a mutant who can affect the way you feel, making you nauseous, dizzy, or even really good, using pheromones. She worked for a time at a brothel using her mutant powers. That brothel got attacked by an anti-mutant group and burnt to the ground, so Stacey X reluctantly at first decided to join up with the X-Men, who would help to confront the group that targeted her workplace. She ended up developing a pretty epic crush on Angel, to the point that although she knew he was already taken, she sent him a video of her jumping rope naked. This never really led to a full-on relationship, but it's so wild I had to include it. Also, apparently this is a thing that people do. People on Twitter told me this is a thing that people do. I'm not sure if I fully believe it, but apparently it happens. Also, I love Stacey X, but she is so weird. Like, who sends someone a video of them jumping rope naked? This is a real thing? This is a real thing? What's happening with the world? What are we doing with our lives? Stacey X must have some amazing inner confidence and self-esteem, and anyone that's done that to send those videos. I love that confidence, I will say. Love yourself, love your body, jump rope naked, I don't know. What are the takeaways from this list? Number 2, Madeleine Pryor and Cyclops. I mean, I have to talk about this one. I have to talk about it. I don't have a choice. Madeleine Pryor is the clone of Jean Grey created by Mr. Sinister so that he could engineer the perfect mutant offspring, or just the perfect mutant if you will, after Jean's apparent death. Cyclops would meet Maddie and fall in love with her because, well, she reminded him of Jean, probably, although for some reason no one ever thought this was super suspicious or weird that she was a one-for-one copy of Jean. Just a coincidence, they thought. Nothing to worry about, they thought. Well, turns out it was something to worry about when Jean Grey reappeared after Scott and Maddie had their first child together and were married, and Cyclops decided to leave his family to go adventuring with his fellow mutants once more. This ended up driving Maddie crazy, unlocking her true psionic potential and causing her to make a deal with demons. Because that's what happens when someone leaves you. She would go on to have an affair with Scott's brother Havoc and become a frightening mutant-based supervillain. So, not your typical fairy tale ending for these two. Number 1, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. And if you want to get into more awful stuff from the universe from whence this relationship came, be sure to check out Worst Things from the Marvel Ultimate Universe. That's a series of videos we did, and yeah, there's a lot of stuff that happened. I got a lot more things to share with you. Yes, on the Earth of 1610, also known as the Ultimate Reality, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver were a couple. And yes, they were still brother and sister. And it could be possible in this reality that Wolverine, who saw them getting intimate together, was even their father. It was probably still Magneto though, but it definitely doesn't make any of this better. It doesn't make it better. I mean, I don't know what you could do to make this relationship better. Either just don't have it happen at all, or have these two not be brother and sister. Or at least make it so they didn't know that they were brother and sister and this was some kind of awful, twisted mistake. That might help, but no. They knew. They were into it. People joked about it, and then it was confirmed as being a thing in the Ultimate Comics. On behalf of 1610, I'm very sorry about that. Number 10, Rogue and Iceman. One of the relationships that just didn't seem to work for many readers was the forced comic book relationship between Rogue and Iceman, which seemed to be inspired by the Fox X-Men films where the two were together. I'll admit that watching the movies, I personally did not mind it, but of course in my heart of hearts, Rogue and Gambit will always win out the day when it comes to both Rogue and Gambit's one true love and romance being each other. So it was very strange when the comics came to echo the films by trying to make Rogue and Iceman a thing. Because while in the movies Gambit might not be around to steal Rogue's heart, in the comics he still very much existed. Like, a lot. But instead it seemed that the Ultimate Universe had other plans that more followed in line with the Fox film franchise shifts. After absorbing Gambit's powers and killing him, she ended up being able to touch people without hurting them. And so Rogue decided to touch Bobby. Because I guess that's what you do. Number 9, Richter and Wolfsbane. So admittedly these two weren't really so much a problem together, it was more when they had split up and then Richter was with his close friend and recent lover Shatterstar that things got kind of weird. Although they also had a kind of weirdness that was really well written and allowed us to tackle a bunch of different real world issues within the world of the X Factor series. So it was a good kind of weird, really. It was a good kind of weird, but it was still weird. Reign intended to rejoin X Factor after leaving the X-Men and X-Force behind, only to find out that Richter is now with Shatterstar. And to be clear, I don't think Reign actually wanted to leave the X-Force, more she kinda got like kicked out of the X-Force. Sad. Reign returning was immensely offended by Richter having moved on, and by his gay relationship with Shatterstar. Reign actually claims that the child that she's pregnant with is Richter's, hoping to undo his gayness and win him back. The child was not Richter's of course, but was actually Harim Ari's, who had given up his life to save both Reign's and the life of their child. Eventually Richter finds out the truth about this, but in an amazing turn of events decides to still support Reign, despite the fact that she lied to him. And the two actually end up having a great heart-to-heart about just everything that's happened between them. Reign would even later team up with Shatterstar to defeat a demon following this ordeal. Like I said, it's weird, but it's good weird. Cause I also love that like part of the resolution is like, let's team up together and fight a demon. Yeah, that's bonding. Me and my ex's partner. I think it's so cute. Two exes coming together to be friends. Yes. Number 8, everyone? Everyone in a relationship with everyone. Welcome to Krakoa. A more unconventional, I suppose, kind of weirdness is going on right now in Krakoa that has got a lot of people talking. People are talking about this all the time in comments online. They're like, what is going on? With this melting pot of all the X-Men and mutant history being mixed together, it seems like all relationships are kind of existing at once in a way on Krakoa right now. Relationships are not as clearly defined here. Many characters seem to be weaving in and out of multiple relationships almost seamlessly, as though we are kind of welcoming in an age of polyamory, which I guess makes sense considering one of the guiding laws or principles on Krakoa is to make more mutants. How do you do that? Well, when a mutant and another mutant fall in love. An example of this is what we are seeing in the summer house, where everyone has their own room, but you may have noticed that Wolverine is also bunkering down with the Summers. Jean's room in the house is actually situated between both Wolverine and Cyclops's, and both Logan and Scott also seem to be getting along better than ever, as though the love triangle has evolved to some kind of throuple, which I'm super into, I gotta be honest. But yeah, you should definitely check out, you gotta check out these blueprints, because you can see it. It's like Jean and then like Wolverine and Cyclops on either end of her rooms. And of course, this is only one of many different examples that are out there in the comics right now. I personally find it refreshing to see these types of less mainstream, but very much real world sorts of relationships getting some love in literature, and especially with very mainstream publishers like Marvel, because yeah, I feel like we don't see that as often. So is it weird really, or is it just great? I want to say it's just great. That's my opinion. You can let me know your opinion in the comments, because that's also, I like other people's opinions, whether or not they match my own. Let's all share opinions and be friends. You know what I mean? Number 7. Pyro and Jean Grey. In issue 9 of Marauders, this ship happens between St. John Allardyce's Pyro and Jean Grey's Marvel Girl. Of course, no need to panic about how or why this happened, as in actuality, it's not real. I'm not sure if it was Pyro himself who came up with the idea of Jean and him being shipped in this telepathic illusion, or if it was Emma, but I feel like since Emma Frost's the one creating it for Yellow Jacket with the help of the Stepford Cuckoos, it's likely that she is the one who decided to ship the two together. I also see her being like, who do I want to ship Pyro with? Jean, because I hate Jean. No, I don't know. They love each other now. They hate each other. I don't know what's going on. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list as much as I am loving bringing it to you, please be sure to reciprocate the love by giving this video a thumbs up. And I'm sending love back out to you right now, so thank you for doing that. Number 6. Cypher and Bae. Technically both of these two are mutants, but their relationship developed kind of suddenly, which is what makes it so weird and also so great. Once again though, this is another kind of charming and endearing weird relationship. Really, I just love weird things, I think, so I think many of them are charming and endearing to me. Most of them are. These two met during the Otherworld tournament in the Ten of Swords event, and their challenge where they faced off against each other was to get married? If you like me love weird stuff, by the way, and if you haven't checked out Ten of Swords yet, you need to do that. It is so amazingly weird. You gotta read it, it's so good. Both Cypher and Bae did end up following through with this challenge, both gaining points for their team. And since then, this arranged marriage between the Krakoan mutant and a Rocco mutant has stuck. Hey, if it works, it works. Number 5. Magik and the Death Commandos. So this is less of a full-blown relationship and more of a weird tactical move of Magik's in combat, but it caught me so off guard and made me laugh so hard when I read it that I thought I needed to share it with you, so here we go. Also, anything that allows me to celebrate the awesome mutant series we have going on currently makes me really happy, so I'm happy to bring it to you. New Mutants being one of those series. Here, Magik and the team are facing off against Sybil and the Shi'ar Death Commandos, a group of hired muscle basically. At one point, Magik confronts the team of Death Commandos in issue number 5 of the newest New Mutants run, volume 4, that started in 2019. She asks them if any of them want to make out, and when they reveal that they either aren't interested or they're too busy working to accept her offer, she tells them they made the wrong choice. Apparently, if they had agreed, then Magik would have been cool defeating them with love, but in this case, they'll be dealing with Magik and her soul sword instead. Yeah, they definitely made a bad choice. And fortunately, none of them happen to be human, which means that Magik doesn't have to worry about not killing them as per Krakoa's rules. Some very bad news for the Death Commandos. Number 4. Angel and Psylocke. These two had some super intense weirdness show up in their relationship, and it all went down when Angel as Archangel became the new Apocalypse. Psylocke was his love at the time, and against her will he managed to brainwash her into becoming his bride, despite the fact that he was already with Pestilence, who was also his baby mama. He was like, I'm with you, Pestilence, but I feel like I need another bride, you know what I mean? All the brides gather round, says Angel. You might think, well, hey, that's pretty awful and weird, but guess what? It only gets weirder. Psylocke was freed of Archangel's / New Apocalypse's control and attempted to appeal to him, to make him remember the goodness inside of him and revert him back to the hero he was. However, when this failed, she was forced to kill him. Angel, however, didn't die permanently though, but instead was resurrected into a new version of himself, becoming Angel once more. This new version of Angel was a complete refresh of the character, with all of Warren's past memories being lost to him, including the memories about him and Psylocke being in a relationship. His appearance was also back to his original look, except for some reason he still had his techno-organic wings. Because I guess techno-organic wings are way cooler than organic wings, but you know what's not cool? His and Psylocke's relationship, I suppose. Because they cut that part. Number 3. Mystique and Gambit. More of a moment in the comics than a full-blown couple, but still these two together were a weird time. Especially considering that Gambit is often seen as the true love of Rogue, and Mystique is, of course, Rogue's mother. Adoptive mother, but all the same. Already we got a super weird scene where a mutant student of Gambit's, known as Fox, approached him in the showers attempting to seduce him. Gambit manages, though it seems just barely, to resist her charms, and this is already awkward enough as this is a student-teacher relationship, so but it's made even weirder when we later learn that Mystique had actually infiltrated the Xavier school under the guise of Fox, who was never really a true student as this was just a disguise devised by Mystique. Mystique later claims to have done this in an attempt to protect her daughter against Gambit, whom she didn't think was good enough for her daughter, but I gotta be honest, trying to seduce your daughter's partner seems like a really weird way at attempting to protect them. No wonder Rogue is always getting mad at her adoptive mama Mystique for meddling. She's like, this is weird, Mystique, don't meddle this way. This is not a normal mom thing, stop it. Number 2. Nightcrawler and Amanda Sefton. So this is a weird one, because before Amanda Sefton was known as Amanda Sefton, she was Jermaine Sardos, the daughter of Nightcrawler, admittedly his adopted sister, as Nightcrawler of course was not born into the Sardos family, but was merely taken in and raised by them. But still, it's pretty weird, they're still siblings. Even weirder, Jermaine had apparently always been in love with her brother, but when he was accused of murdering their other brother, Stefan, Jermaine refused to accept that Kurt had done so in cold blood, and sought him out to find out what was really going on. In truth, Kurt had actually killed Stefan, but only because Stefan had, at an earlier time, made Kurt promise to do so if he ever became too dangerous, which was what happened. Jermaine disguised herself as Amanda and did her best to make sure no one would recognize her, not even her brother Kurt, who grew up with her. This plan miraculously worked, and Amanda began to investigate and also date her brother. Oh my. What's going on? Number 1. Juggernaut and She-Hulk. Juggernaut isn't a mutant, and is usually more often thought of as an X-Men villain, but he has also teamed up with the X-Men from time to time, even sometimes seeing eye to eye with his stepbrother Charles Xavier, though usually that's not the case. She-Hulk, however, is not a member of the X-Men, nor has she ever been, and is not a mutant, but she is an acclaimed hero, which is one of the things that makes this relationship so weird. Well, that and the fact that it was a super random hookup. It all went down in Uncanny X-Men issue number 435 when She-Hulk was representing Juggernaut in the court of law. The ship was considered so abhorrent that years later She-Hulk actually denied that it ever happened. In the 2005 She-Hulk series in issue 21, it was claimed that an alternate version of She-Hulk from Earth 721, who had been on vacation and impersonating her 616 counterpart, was actually the one who did the deed. And She-Hulk stands by that to this day. She's like, it wasn't me, it was an alternate version of me. I would never do that. But people are like, what's the real story, She-Hulk? What really happened? I believe her. I believe She-Hulk. She would admit to it if she did it. That's what I think.